A new Elden Ring patch has arrived, and with it has brought a bunch of changes to the Shadow Realm Blessing buff. Now, if you don't know what Shadow Realm Blessing is, it's a specific buff to the DLC location that allows you to have more damage and more defenses by picking up items known as Scatter Tree Fragments. And there's been some notes that have been telling you that it has been buffed to where like the first half of your buffs are just better. It's a very vague way of describing it. They're never really clear when they always describe this type of stuff, but I did break it down for you guys. Now, before the buff, there actually was a 5% damage increase for every single time you activated the Shadow Realm Blessing, and went all the way up to ×2 damage. And no, this is not cumulative numbers. But as of right now, the latest patch, this is going to be the changes. The first half is going to be a significant increase, the most noticeable one being right at the beginning. Instead of a 5% damage increase, you get a 10% damage increase, so your first Scatter Tree Blessing is very important. And as you notice, when you get to your 7th buff, you already get 50% damage. Before the patch, you had to buff 10 times to get to 50% damage. But current patch, once you get to 10 buffs, that's 65%, which is like 15% more than the previous patch. So your first 12 buffs are very important, and honestly, Scatter Tree Fragments for your first 12 upgrades are very easy to come by because you only need like 1 or 2 to actually upgrade this buff. Once you get at this point, then you're going to require 3 fragments, and honestly, past the 12th buff, you don't really gain much returns. So it's going to be a lot easier to get to really decent damage and good damage negation. And they did also prove the maximum amount of damage. It used to be like ×2, now it's ×2.05. So there is going to be more of an incentive to reach the max Shadow Realm Blessing. And in terms of the damage negation, it also is very similar. The first half of your buffs are going to give you much more returns, and then towards the later half is going to be diminishing returns, but the maximum total is actually going to be increased now. Instead of a 50% damage negation buff, it's now a 51% damage negation buff. But yeah, the whole purpose of this is to make the early game easier, because before the buff, you kind of had to go around and do a bunch of exploring to gather Scatter Tree Fragments just to fight all these bosses. But now with this current patch, you don't really need to do a bunch of exploring or a bunch of backtracking. You can pretty much just like naturally progress from area to area, and hopefully you have a smoother experience. I guess what this really does is incentivize the players that don't really explore as much, which I guess is perfectly fine. Everyone plays games for different reasons anyway. But yeah, just thought to make a quick little guide just covering everything, and yeah, catch you guys around. Bye.